Hello, this is Ensconce. So I'm actually going to record this. I did it yesterday, but unfortunately the audio was terrible. So I'm going to go back into ranked and do a little more submarine play. Yesterday I played the U-190. We won 7. We saved our star 2 times and we lost twice. So overall, pretty nifty day. 7, 2, and 2. So let's kind of talk about the changes that happened with subs in 10.8. And then we can go into the build and kind of concepting. So, 2 big changes. 1, concealment-wise, detectability range. Detection after emitting a sonar ping, 2 kilometers. That's pretty big. What that means is that... Now, it might be that if you're like... Well, no, I guess there's just not really an understanding as to what that hell is. Maybe if you're at maximum depth and you ping and somebody's directly over you, they'll see you, but I don't think that would work because at maximum depth it's 0. But detectability after emitting a sonar ping was pretty big. It used to be 4, which meant that in sub-v-sub combat, whoever pinged first, if you were within 4 kilometers, was now revealed, potentially for like the entire duration of the sub-duel, without needing to use hydrophone. Not forcing the enemy sub to have to use a consumable to engage you is a huge advantage to the enemy sub, because when you finally do stop pinging and you actually drop off their, visual detection, they just turn on their consumable and then they keep fighting you and potentially kill you, especially if they've now moved outside of 4 kilometers and your consumable is down. So reducing the ping emittance down to 2 kilometers was pretty huge. Also, they did change hydrophone, but we'll talk about that when we get into the equipment section. Another big change. Torpedoes have a minimum distance lockout, which I guess is not described here. But basically, there's a set amount of time. So before it might have been a quarter second. Now it's like a second. And the amount of distance that a torp can travel before it arms is significant, because there were some people that were using shotgun subs where they would just surface literally right off the side of somebody and just wham, slam their damage into them. That has been removed. It's been pushed out noticeably. That's not to say that you couldn't try to shotgun from a closer distance, but it's less of a guaranteed thing. And as there is more room to maneuver, you may take more damage from gunfire. The enemy will have a little more time to respond, although granted it wouldn't be a lot, but it is a noticeable change. Also, it means that if 2 subs are underwater right up next to each other, they're going to dud out. They're not actually going to be able to strike. So if you're going to engage a sub, you need to engage a sub at range. 1, because assured detection is 2 kilometers, so you're giving information for free. And 2, because you may not be able to fire your torps and actually hit them, because 2 kilometers is pretty close in terms of trying to get your torps to actually catch that line and go in. And yeah, so big thing to know. Lastly, dive capacity. This is a huge change, and I really do mean a huge change. So dive capacity, you burn 1 unit per second under the water, so you have 517 seconds with the build I'm running. However, if you are detected while you are under the water at all, you are burning at a rate of 4.6 with my build. And it would be 4 if I changed a thing. But it used to be, 1 second normally, 2 seconds if detected. Now it's 4. It was quadrupled. So this is huge because the US ships don't have any way to keep their dive capacity if they're underwater. They just lose it. It just gets burned. The German subs have a consumable that locks the dive capacity in place for X amount of seconds, which means if you are in a sub-v-sub duel against a US sub, you can force them to lose approximately 3 entire minutes worth of dive time while you lose none, assuming an extended engagement that does not result in torp kills. So very, very important. Those 3 changes are quite huge. It makes the US line need to stay back and operate much more stealthy, and it allows the German subs to bully forward because they have the threat of detection on enemy subs to force them back. So it's actually very, very big change. Going to equipment, I've never seen sonar get knocked out, and having a longer damage con's not going to matter. So main armament 1, engine room protection. If it saves us a damage con, it's good. That being said, I did actually die to a flood in one of the games. Now, 3% reduced chance of flooding may not have saved me, but it might have. Still, I do believe that less. If I don't know how often your engine or steering gear might actually get knocked out, but if it does and you have to burn your damage con and then you get pinged by an enemy sub and you eat shit and die, well, that's a problem. So anything you can do to avoid losing your damage con is going to be imperative, because you need this as an evasive cooldown. Over here we have additional torpedo speed as well as less risk of tubes being knocked out. Additional dive capacity is an option, although this is only when detected by an enemy. This may become something very important for US ships, as that does actually translate to a significant amount of time. But on German subs, I don't think that's going to matter. And increased ping speed, I've gotten used to the speed the pings are. I don't need this, so we'll take some additional speed, which may be a bad thing on the torpedoes, as if they go slower, that might actually help them to maneuver, but nonetheless, that's what we're going to take. Slot 4, submarine steering gears. The rudder and diving planes move pretty well on the German ships. The US ships, they move worse, but the US ships get a little consumable boost that's going to help them with their time in ascent, etc. So they get a consumable to make them equal the German, which is kind of, I mean, that's actually important. They have a consumable that all it does is make them equivalent to another nation, whereas this nation has a consumable that gives them an ability that the other does not have, which is it freezes your depth timer in place. Meaning, actually, if you're using this consumable and you are surfaced, you will not regen depth timer. It just locks it in place for the duration there. Base is 30 seconds. I have double extended it, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. Propulsion mod I haven't used. It's been fine. Reducing fire and flood time by 15% I think is probably pretty small in a meme. It's not something that often happens. You might get hit by depth charges and stuff, so that could certainly be a thing, but it's not a thing that's going to happen a lot. I prefer the additional maneuverability, because maneuverability can be life. It can avoid torps, it can avoid depth charges. It's important. Slot 5, torpedo lockout system. You might think, well, this will help in a subduel. But if you look at the actual torpedoes, their detection is 2.1 kilometers. So this doesn't actually give us anything, because we would literally see it earlier than this would tell us where it is. This submarine steering gear mod 3 was a requirement, because the consumable mod did not matter. It didn't catch any breakpoints. It didn't cause any differences. So, 40% reduced rudder and diving was pretty much a no-brainer. Also, I guess you repair quite faster if it actually breaks, so that might save you a damage con as well. But long story short is, why am I taking consumable mod? Because hydrophone got altered. It used to be the Germans had 60-second hydrophone, whereas the Americans had 45 seconds. So it was a clear hydrophone difference, which helps them be better sub-killers. Or at least that's the intent. That got changed. So the US and the German have a 40-second base, although the German reloads faster. It's 60-second reload instead of 80-second reload. So again, it kind of helps them in a subduel, because if they both end up fighting each other with their hydrophones up, the Germans are going to cycle theirs faster and then have a vision advantage on top of the US ship, which may get them a kill before the US can actually see them to be able to respond. Another reason why we're going with consumable, there's a commander skill as well as this. This provides plus 10% to consumable action time, and there's a commander skill which provides 7.5%. These two combined take this from 40 up to like 43 something, up to 47.3. So this is 7.3 seconds more than base of vision of the enemy submarine. So this is very important. In case the other person has not buffed them, that gives you a vision advantage. 2, you'll see the interval between pings is 15 seconds. What that means is you're going to send out a ping, and it's going to update positions on the mini-map normally 2 times. But with the extended consumable duration, it's 3 times. You pass that 15-second breakpoint of the 45 seconds, giving you more information. So it gives you not only more vision in a subduel, it gives you more information or more updated options if you're trying to throw pings into a smoke cloud to harass a DD. Potentially get a ping on them, maybe make them run out of the smoke cloud, or perhaps burn a damage con where maybe you can follow up later to be able to get torps to latch onto them and chase them away. So I think this is so important, for a multitude of reasons that I am willing to give up the additional maneuverability of this to pass that breakpoint, if nothing else. And then we have to talk about the reserve battery unit one more time, because a base of 30 seconds, however, a detection of 40 seconds. Assuming the enemy sub has no additional advantage, like no duration, you're going against a 40-second hydrophone. If you are detected in a subduel for 40 seconds and you activate this consumable, it locks your dive time for 35.48. So for approximately 4.5 seconds, you are experiencing a loss rate of 4.6 units of dive time per second. Now, if this gets extended out to a maximum of 47.3, which a US ship could do as well, then you're losing approximately 12. But if you didn't buff this, you could be losing as much as 17. It gets even worse. This can steamroll. When you start to run out of dive capacity, you run out of options. If you are forced to surface and you have no option about dealing with that, then there are guns up on the surface and you may not want to surface. You may not be in a position to be able to surface. Dive capacity is very important. Managing dive capacity is very important. And this is again why I say, if you, in a German sub, take a fight with a US sub, you may not land torpedoes. They may damage con them, they may avoid them. There are tricks and ability to mitigate torpedoes incoming, etc. Try to fool them. But you can't fool being lit. And if the US sub has nothing that it can do to lock down the depth timer, then it needs to either A, get the fuck out, B, kill you, or C, just eat shit and lose all the depth time and hope that it's not going to get them murdered. Because over this single consumable use, 47 seconds, if we look at this just as the base rate of 47 seconds times 4 is a little over 3 minutes worth of dive time. And as a base, you have maybe 7. So 2 of these uses in this new different world can burn all of the dive juice off of a US sub and force it to surface and not allow it to come back down. This is extremely powerful right now. Going in on the commander, first is going to take consumable reload time. The consumables on the German subs are extremely important. 2-point skill, preventative maintenance. It's buffed with Luchens, so 45% chance to not have something knocked out, very important. If it saves you damage con, it could save your life. Third skill, it could be number of consumables, but I actually would argue it's consumable duration. For what I've said before, the ping point, the break point of the 15-second ping interval on the hydrophone, and the additional use of that battery, the dive consumable, the depth time lockup thing, for extended sub duration. So these 3 I'm thinking mandatory. And then for a 4-point talent, I really don't see anything here for a German sub, although this is debatable. So additional speed while underwater. You already go slow at tier 8, so I just don't think this is going to matter if you're in the low dive capacity condition. An additional 2 knots, I mean, it's useful, but I don't know if it's enough to write 4 points home about. Same thing, reducing dive depletion when under 25%. This is also important, but in a German submarine, you're not going to live on the water or underwater. You have good detection. You can be on the surface as much as possible and choose when you want to go into the water. So because of this and the fact that you have your consumable, it's unlikely that you're going to be at 25% dive time unless something goes really wrong. So I don't really think this is going to be in play either. Now at tier 10 subs go faster under the water than they do on top of it. So these could definitely be things to look at tier 10, where you're actively using dive capacity to make plays or to move around the map. Could absolutely see it there. Sonarman expert. This is probably more for like a subduel. Once you pop your hydrophone, the pings, if they hit, last longer. So it means that if you get a single hit on a sub, it's going to last longer. Potentially, you're not going to have to get a reping. Maybe you're not good at pinging. Maybe you miss. This will help with that. I don't have too much of an issue with the ping, so I don't think this is really going to be relevant to me. So I haven't taken it. Torpedo aiming master. If you get a double ping and then fire and hold the double ping all the way for those torps to go from point A to point B, then you get plus 15% damage per torp. If the enemy chooses to damage con before the torps hit, That goes away. Gone. So this is going to be a situational talent. Not to say it can't be useful, but this is at the mercy of your enemy. The only time it's not is if you find that an enemy has just damage conned, and you can completely exploit that all the way from point A to point B, which I think is a pretty conditional statement, so I don't know if that's 4 points. And then, of course, Adrenaline Rush. You're going to get hurt. Battleships are going to depth charge bomb you. You're going to take some shots occasionally from other subs or maybe a torp. This can absolutely turn into an easy 10%, 15% reload speed, which can be very important. So if these are your base 4, what comes after that? Well, additional consumables. Having consumables is life. This is required. Then we've got over here, Sonarman, which is plus 20% on a double highlighted ping, minus 10% on a single. It's not hard to hit single pings. It's not. You get used to it. It's not hard. Having a 10% reduction is really not the end of the world. However, you really do want that twice highlighted sector to last long enough for you to interact with it more, or for the torps to actually get from point A to point B to do the thing. So I do actually like this talent a lot. For 3 points, I think it gives a lot of value. On the other lines, as far as priority target and incoming fire alert, I don't think these matter. I haven't found last stand to be extremely important. Theoretically, this could save you a damage con. I haven't found it to be that big of a deal. Watchful is if you're underneath somebody's hydro, you're at max depth, or you're underneath somebody's radar at operating depth. It's a good skill for information value, but ideally you have that information going in, or at least you've got a rough idea of it. But if you're unsure about timers and cooldowns, definitely not a bad idea. For the remaining points, I've chosen to pick these 3. This is the one that increases my dive depletion. I have additional dive capacity overall. However, I deplete faster if I'm detected under the water. But I have my consumable. If I'm detected, I can pop my consumable. It's going to lock up a lot of that depletion. So I feel pretty safe about this. If you wanted to take this on a US sub, you would need to be playing at a safe distance and staying safe, because otherwise that's going to result in some additional oof, especially if you take a subdual. And then these 2 may actually be incorrect now. What does that mean? If I'm detected by the enemy, my sonar cools down faster, 10%. Okay. So I did talk about down here longer lasting pings, but a longer lasting ping doesn't matter if it gets damage conned. The follow-up ping matters once a ping gets damage conned. This is going to increase your reduce your cooldown while you're in an active engagement. This is more likely to get pings on target, so you can get torps on target. Same thing with this. If you are detected, you reload a little faster. There's a break point here. Minus 5% torpedo reload time, and let's say your sub is at half, so that's a 10% difference. So if we look at the torp tubes, they're going to reload 58 seconds. What's 10% off of that? 5.8. We'll just say 6. That takes you to 52. Drop another 5% off that. What is that? 52 halved is 2.6. That's going to take it down to 50. If it's about 50 seconds to reload when damaged, and we have 47.3 seconds on our hydrophone, then if we're able to land a ping pretty much toward the end of our hydrophone consumable, then we could absolutely get those other torps off. And the faster that we can do it, the better, because the damage con actually cycles pretty quick. You can see 36.1 second reload time. So if they damage con shortly before a ping comes in and hits them, well, that's going to matter. And the additional consumable duration on this may actually be worth noting for damage con party 1, because with 6 seconds on top of another 40%, if we start getting this into 7 or 8, that may actually last. Your immunity window may last through the second wave of torps, because usually they'll be staggered. They won't be launched at once. So something to think about, possibly. I don't think I've gotten much value out of this, so the damage control party mod 1 may actually be useful. As far as flags, we're going to run speed, consumables, because those are huge. Additional flood chance. The flood chance on the torpedoes seems to be fairly poor. They seem to give up damage as well as flood chance to have their homing effect. So it gives them a flat 15 more, which is kind of nice. And I do run a det flag just because this is ranked, so it's a competitive thing for me. And it doesn't say that it's not, it doesn't have a little crossover, so I assume you can in fact detonate, although I don't think I've ever seen a sub do it. So that's going to be my build and my reasoning structure for the U190. Kick this up to YouTube. Hopefully it is helpful.